Hello, German Stargate fans. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. Hope you're all having a wonderful summer. It's hard to believe that 25 years ago, Stargate SG-1 began with Children of the Gods. 25 years! Kids are driving who have been born since then. Kids are drinking who have been born since then. Ay. But what a show, and what a ride. 17 seasons of Stargate spawned from that first episode. And from that first movie, it gave us a several grains of huge ideas which morphed into this franchise that we all know and love. One of the people responsible, along with Brad Wright, was Jonathan Glassner, for taking the idea that Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich began in the feature film and turning it into a show that we all love. Jonathan joined me on Dial the Gate a little earlier this past year to discuss bringing Stargate SG-1 to life in those early days, and I'd like to share a piece of that interview with you to go along with the celebration of this excellent series. Big thanks to Nicole for making this possible and asking for my contribution. See you on the other side. I wanted to ask you for a long time about taking us back down this road of Stargate SG-1. It's 1996, I believe. The film has come out. You and a couple of others are working on, independently of each other, an idea for a series. Where were you in your head at that time? You were working on Outer Limits.
Well,
And
I think Brad remembers this a little bit differently than I do, but roughly the same. He and I were doing the Outer Limits. I was the American up there doing it, and he was the local doing it. And I had been up there for like 5 years at this point. And my wife was ready to kill me because she didn't want to be up there anymore. And so I told him, Jim, I wasn't going to come back and do any more Outer Limits. And this was season 3. And the president of MGM actually flew up to Vancouver and sat down with me and basically said in so many words, what would it take to get you to come back, to stay? And I said...
for a season 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, there's nothing you could do that would make me stay. And he said, because it would be like a divorce, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, well, we have a commitment from Showtime for a 22 episode order of a new series. It's yours if you want it, but you have to stay up here. And if you have an idea that Showtime would want. And I left and thought about it. And then I came back and I said, well, you have this movie in your library called Stargate that, in my opinion, should have been a series, not a movie. It would make a great series. And apparently Brad did the exact same thing. Brad had a meeting with him and also pitched Stargate. And I'm sure Brad and I had talked about it at some point, which is why it was in both of our heads.
Because you were both on Outer Limits.
Yeah, we were both doing Outer Limits, yeah. But Brad lived up there. He wasn't threatening to leave or anything.
Right.
But they wanted him to stay. And John Symes, the president of MGM, who was a brilliant guy, said, we can't do that. We can't do Stargate because we have a deal with Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, so we can't do that. Anything else you want to do? And I couldn't think of anything else in their library that I wanted to do. And I was too busy to come up with a new thing. And then 2 weeks later, he called back and said, that other deal fell through. It's yours. You can do it. And how do you feel about being Brad at the time? I was Brad's boss at the time.
Okay.
But we were really, at this point, we had been doing it for 3 years and we were basically partners.
Yeah, you're in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. And so John came back and said, how do you feel about doing it with Brad as equal partners, co-create it? And I said, great. And I guess Brad said, great too. And the rest was history. That's what we did. So we went off and wrote the pilot and we co-wrote the pilot. And then it went from there. We had to go pitch it to the network, to Showtime, what we were going to do. They were happy with what we were talking about. They were happy with the pilot script. So we went to production, and we were so fortunate that they had that commitment from Showtime, because we went straight into full production for the series, not just the pilot, which enabled us to amortize those massive sets and visual effects and all that stuff across 22 episodes instead of just one pilot. Because that pilot would have been a, $30 million pilot or something if we didn't.
It would have been ridiculous. Yeah, almost as bad as the movie.
Yeah. So that's what enabled us to do it, was that brilliant deal that John Symes had made with Showtime at the time. And then after we made, I think, 6 episodes, or maybe been 8 episodes, after we turned those in to the network, they were so happy with it that they committed to 48 more.
Wow.
And that gave us, such creative freedom, I can't even tell you.
So this is I imagine so. So this is the first I'm hearing that Showtime and MGM had come to a 22 episode agreement of something else, but that something had not been decided. They just wanted another product.
Exactly. We had been doing the Outer Limits. The Outer Limits had been a huge success for them. It had done, very good numbers for them. They were very happy with it. So John Symes was able to spin that off and say, okay, if you want more of these, then you got to give us this. And he made this great deal. And, he and the MGM, business people and stuff. And we were the beneficiaries of it.
And I, as an audience member, absolutely. I got to tell you, as a fanboy here, I found a place at the television set Saturday nights, late night, on syndicated programming, Poltergeist: The Legacy and The Outer Limits. And let me tell you something, I was more than a little bit pissed when one of those didn't come on, and instead this big ring is appearing and this girl gets taken by these snake guys, and it's like, what the hell is this? And Jonathan, after the first hour, I had not seen the movie. And after the first hour had ended, I'm sitting there going, it's still running. Why is it still running? I've got to go to church in the morning. So I taped the VCR to get the last hour, and I watched it the next day. And from that point, I was hooked. I had missed it on Showtime, but I had seen it on syndication. Immediately bought Showtime the next weekend and caught myself up. And
now, are you in the States or are you in Canada?
I am in the States.
Oh.
And it was just one of those shows where the casts were kinetic. And they were the reason that you tuned in, not just for that, which is very important, mind you. It is a character in and of itself, but you guys cast so well. So can you tell me a little bit about making an offer for Richard Dean Anderson?
Well, I got to give credit where credit is due. That was John Symes also.
Really?
John Symes had been the executive at Paramount when MacGyver was done and was friends with Rick. And John came to Brad and I, and he said, and he thought we were going to hate the idea. I don't know why he thought that, but he came to Brad and I and he said, how would you feel about Richard Dean Anderson playing Jack? And both of us immediately said, yeah, will he do it? Can we afford him? And he said, well, let me see if I can set a meeting. And we sat down with Rick. And Rick's main thing was, he said, the way it was in the movie, the way Jack was in the movie was he was basically suicidal. And he was this dour, sad guy. He said, I don't want to play that for umpteen episodes. This guy's got to have a sense of humor.
It'd be miserable to watch otherwise.
Yeah. And we said, we're with you 100%. That's what we're planning. That's what we want to do. And we shook hands on it, and he was attached. And he was great. It was just, just as an actor, but as a person, he was just fun to work with.
There is something about Jack where, really fundamentally what happened with Kurt Russell's character in the feature film is of no part to Richard Dean Anderson's portrayal of the character, except when you get him into a corner in certain scenes and you understand that through line of the child suicide is always going to be there. He's just
oh yeah, we kept it in. We just didn't make him looking like he was going to kill himself all the time.
Right, exactly. And the humor, his outlook on life is kind of in a place now where it's, this has happened to me. This is always going to be a part of me, but how I make fun of life is how I get through it. And we as an audience buy that, because when any of the characters or anyone else around him gets close to what happened with him as a father, he snaps. And it's one of those amazing performances that, and in terms of like the breadth of an actor, that Rick can pull that off.
Yeah.
It was just a reward to watch. And then when he's funny, we're on the ground laughing our asses off.
Yeah. And then we did a big search for the rest of the cast in Canada and the US. And that took a while. That was harder. But
tell us about finding Amanda Carter. Samantha Carter.
Amanda, we had read, God, it felt like 1,000 women for the part. We had gotten auditions submitted from all over the world because we'd given up on finding somebody in Canada and the US. She was a really hard part to cast because Showtime wanted her to be an attractive woman.
Yeah, they wanted to sexify it a little bit.
Based
on what I've heard.
Yeah. But you also have to believe that she's an astrophysicist, that she's really smart. She's got to have that sense of humor we wanted, and she has to have comic timing. And she's got to have the physical presence to believe that she was trained as a soldier, right? Those four qualities together, and being a good actor, of course, is really hard to find. You can find any few of them, but the combination of all are really hard.
Yeah, you have to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as you have this, pretty spokesmodel playing a soldier who's an astrophysicist, it's not going to work. They've got to be a real actor, and they've got to have an intelligence to them. And then we got a tape of Amanda doing this comedy show that she was doing in Toronto.
Oh, man.
And we said, let's get this woman in. And she came in and read for us and completely nailed the part. Then we brought her in for a chemistry read with Rick. Because at the time, the thought was there would be will they or won't they romance. Right.
The Air Force isn't, I'm guessing,
the Air Force
extremely involved yet.
That. And right. And she was just great. She just, she was Amanda Carter. She was just, Samantha Carter.
You got it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story about that name. I had named the lead female character in 2 shows before Stargate Samantha, because Samantha was my favorite name. I always said I was going to name my first daughter Samantha, and did. My first daughter's name is Samantha.
I did not know that.
And then my second child was born, and my wife and I were trying to come up with a name, and we came up with Amanda without realizing what we were doing. And all of a sudden I said, it can't be Amanda. I'm going to look like a weirdo here. Like I'm obsessed with Amanda Tapping or Samantha Carter. So we didn't name her Amanda. And it was really totally, didn't even, we weren't thinking of Amanda at that point. And it was beyond that. But anyway.